Okay, we will go ahead and get started. Thank you to everyone for joining me over your lunch hour to talk about delinquencies. My name is Kiki Dilly, and I am a shareholder here with Altitude, but I am also the attorney who is in charge of our debt recovery department. So this is kind of near and dear to my heart and in my wheelhouse. Right now, you should see the PowerPoint presentation taking up most of your screen. There should also be a small box on the left-hand side of the screen with the presenter. On the right side of the menu, you should see a private chat icon. Please use that icon to type in your questions throughout the presentation, and questions will be addressed at the end of the webinar, time permitting. We should be able to address some questions towards the end, so hopefully that works out for everybody. If you have any audio or video issues during the presentation, please click the No Audio or Video button below the presentation on your screen and follow the instructions. One CMCA credit will be automatically generated and emailed to you after the webinar, assuming you attend the entire program. These credits are not transferable, so they're just yours. Please email Jessa Ledesma at JLEDESMA@altitude.law or give her a call at 303-991-2086 if you have any questions about the webinar or about receiving your CMCA certificate. And finally, there will be a survey that will pop up at the end of the webinar. Really appreciate it if you could let us know what you think of the webinar. Your thoughts and opinions are important to us, and we do make changes to our programs and our webinars based on feedback received. So we'll go ahead and get started here. As we all know, HB 221137 changed pre-turnover collections, and by that I mean before you send someone to an attorney or a collection agency for collections. That was the biggest change we've had since 2014 when 1287, 1278, whatever that one was back then, that required all of the changes to collection policies and instituted the 6-month payment plan that was in place since then. 1137 is a law that was passed by the Colorado legislature in 2022, and it took effect on August 9th, 2022. And so we're going to talk about the changes that were made and how those affect what your boards need to do before you send someone to collections, and also how it changed what management companies need to do before you send someone into collections. So first of all, what does your board need to do before you send someone to collections based on these changes that were made in August of 2022. First and foremost, your boards need to authorize updates to their collection policy, their covenant enforcement policy, and their conduct of meetings policies. We cannot take any sort of collection action on any matters that were with the attorney before then or new matters coming to us after then until those policies are updated. Make sure that your boards understand the new requirements and the limitations imposed by 1137. We're still finding, I know that this is now a year and a half old, but we are still finding a lot of boards who don't understand the changes that have been implemented and the new requirements that have been implemented. It's probably a good thing that people don't have enough delinquencies to really be in this day in and day out, but we do need to make sure that the boards have an understanding of those new requirements. First and foremost among those is that the payment plan offer did change from 6 months to 18 months, which is a pretty drastic change, especially when you're talking about money that is needed for like a special assessment, right? The whole purpose of a special assessment is that you need the money right now to do something immediate, whether it's, hail damage or something like that. But we still have to offer everybody that 18-month payment plan to pay those balances over 18 months. And one of the new things that came in with 1137 is that if they accept those payment plans, One default is not enough to send somebody to the next step of collections. You have to wait until someone has missed or been at least 15 days late with their 18-month payment plan payments at least 3 times. They don't have to be 3 times in a row. It can be 3 times over the course of the payment plan, but you do have to wait that minimum of at least 3 months before you can default someone out of the payment plan, assuming they actually accepted the payment plan. Another change that happened with 1137 is that boards now have to vote on sending a particular homeowner to the attorney for collections. That's something that boards are relatively familiar with from the prior changes with 1276 that went into effect back almost 10 years ago now. They were previously used to having to vote on sending a homeowner into foreclosure, but now 1137 has expanded that to include sending homeowners into collections as well. And so you need to have your boards vote on sending someone to collections. It cannot be a general blanket approval to send anyone who owes, $500 or $1,000 or is 4 months delinquent or anything like that. They have to actually vote on each individual homeowner going into collections. So what does the management company need to do to be sure that these new requirements are being complied with? As I said previously, we need to make sure that boards have their collection policy, their covenant enforcement policy, and their conduct of meetings policies updated. But please also make sure that those policies are actually signed and also returned to the attorney that drafted them. It's very frustrating all around for you, for me, for the boards to be delayed if they're trying to send someone into collections because they've already not been paying for a while and the board authorized those policies to be updated but maybe they never signed them. We're not able to move ahead with any kind of collections until we actually have those signed and back in our office so that we can make sure that the boards really have complied before proceeding with collections. So it's always best, once those get signed and approved, to just go ahead and send them back to the attorney, and we just put them on file so that we're ready to hit the ground running when we hit the point that we're ready to proceed with collections against someone. More things that the management company needs to do with 1137. You need to make sure that your internal processes are changed to reflect the new requirements. So we'll talk about this a little bit more later, but 1137 does require the payment plan offer letter to be posted on the unit door, to be sent certified mail to the homeowner. Make sure that your internal processes reflect that. Again, we'll go into the details of that in a little. Interest is now limited to 8%. We'll talk about that also, but make sure that internally you're not charging anybody more than 8% interest on any delinquencies. And application of payments is now mandated. Previously, one of the things with 1276 is that associations had to have in their collection policy how payments are applied, but it didn't state how exactly they were to be applied, right? It was up to the board to determine if they were applied to assessments first, or maybe late fees, or maybe attorney fees, but it just had to be stated in their policy. Well, 1137 changed that, and now payments have to be applied to assessments first. So to the extent that your internal accounting systems require or apply payments to be applied to certain balances first, make sure that your ledgers, if they show the breakdown of how those payments are applied, that they are applying to assessments first. Okay, we're doing okay on time here. And I do have a couple of questions in the chat, so I'm going to address those quickly. Oops. So there was a question about what about annual, semi, or quarterly assessments? And I assume that was back when we were talking about the payment plan. It's the same thing with any sort of assessments. If someone is behind, you have to offer them the 18-month payment plan. They do have to pay monthly, but their extra current assessment would just be due in those annual or semi-annual or quarterly whenever everyone else is paying. This question that do you have to start at 18 months or can you start with an offer of a lower number of months for a payment plan? Unfortunately, everybody has to be offered an 18-month payment plan regardless of the balance. If you have a balance that is very small, maybe it's one late fee or something like that, we generally recommend that boards just be willing to waive a very small balance in order to not have to offer a payment plan. But if you have small annual assessments that the monthly payment would be relatively small under an 18-month payment plan, it's a bit annoying, but you do have to offer that 18-month payment plan. The legislature does have language in there about payments being at least $25 per month plus current assessments, which I believe their intention was that payment plans didn't have to be 18 months if the balance wasn't equal to or more than 25 times 18. But unfortunately, that's not how they wrote the statute. The language of the statute does require an 18-month payment plan, regardless of how small the balance is. Does the collection policy have to be recorded? No, it does not. Our current covenants only allow a lien to be placed on a lot for delinquent fees. Must the board vote to record a lien if recordation is required? In the case of liens, Kiowa, assuming your association is required to comply with Kiowa, which is the vast majority of associations are required to comply with Kiowa and do fall under Kiowa. Kiowa allows for a lien to be kind of out there in the universe as soon as someone falls delinquent. And so we always recommend that boards, management companies, attorneys, whoever is handling your liens actually do record a paper lien with the county just to be sure that a title company catches that there is a balance due. But because your association already has a lien sort of out there in the universe, recording the lien with the county is really a formality, and it's just a notice that this lien exists. And so because the lien exists as soon as a balance becomes delinquent, it would be sort of redundant and illogical to require a board to actually vote on filing a lien. Because the lien already exists, we're just notifying everybody that the lien exists. So the short answer to the question is no, a board does not have to vote to record the lien, but they do have to vote to send someone to collections. If the board hasn't signed their updated policies yet, but are doing so, they want to know what the effective date is. Should it be August 9th, 2022 or now? That's sort of up to them. Presumably, usually what we see is that the effective date is backdated to August because behind the scenes in practice, they have been already following the updated policies. They just haven't signed on the line saying that they have updated their policies. If that's the case, I think it's fine either way. I think it's okay to put August 9th, 2022 on there. I've seen those. But I've also seen ones that put the effective date of whatever day they're signing it. Either way is fine. But certainly if they weren't following the updated requirements prior to today or whenever they sign it, you don't want to backdate it because then it's not accurate. I will talk about the 8% interest a little bit later on. There's some questions about that. Loss assessments, if those require the 18-month payment plan, any kind of charge that's going to the homeowner requires an 18-month payment plan offer. Some more questions about interest. We will talk about that later. And I think that covers enough parts of the chat questions that we'll move on, because I think we're going to address some of these later, but I'll certainly continue looking at them to make sure that we catch everything as we go. All right, more changes that the management company needs to do on their end. Also, one of the things that updated with 1137 is that any delinquent homeowners need to be sent a monthly invoice. We recommend that language be added to those monthly invoices for anyone in bankruptcy and anybody in collections. Someone being in bankruptcy or being sent to collections doesn't negate the requirement for the association to have to send out those monthly invoices to everyone, but it does muddy the waters a little bit. For instance, in bankruptcy, you're not supposed to be collecting against anyone in bankruptcy, right? That's federal law under the bankruptcy code. But Colorado state law says you have to send them a monthly invoice. So we can provide some language to you to add to your monthly invoices that help walk that line a little bit to make it clear to the homeowner that we're not trying to collect against them, but still allow you to comply with the Colorado law. The hiccup that we see with people already in collections being sent monthly invoices is that most of the time there is going to be, or all of the time really, there is a delay between when attorney fees are incurred and when they actually appear on the ledger. So if you're sending out monthly invoices, they're not going to have the most current attorney fees listed on there, which means if somebody pays the balance due on that monthly invoice, they're still going to owe some additional money. And that's what we're trying to avoid, sending them a bill for an amount that isn't actually the accurate current amount. So we have some language that you can add to your monthly invoices that will notify people that this may not be the total balance due, which is complying with the statute. If you're in collections, you need to contact the attorney handling your collections in order to get the current accurate balance due. If anyone would like that language, my email address will be at the end of the presentation, and feel free to reach out to me and I can forward that language to you. It's not a problem. All right, and one more thing for the management companies to make sure that they're doing internally is to please document everything. Anytime you reach out to a homeowner, whether it's a call, whether it's responding to an email, whether it is sending out that monthly invoice, make sure you document everything. Same thing with anything coming to your office from the homeowner. Make sure your calls are documented. You don't necessarily need to record them, certainly, but if you have internal notes in your system that can summarize the discussion, who they talked to, what was said, that can be really great down the road if anyone questions whether or not anyone has complied with these new requirements. And finally, we just want to say, remember to be flexible. In this industry, we all know things change all the time. The legislature is always looking at new laws or tweaking old laws or clarifying old laws or changing things, and we need to remember to be flexible. We thought that it was relatively likely that an 1137 cleanup bill might happen last year in the legislature, but that did not happen. This legislature is back in session this year, and they very well may introduce something else this year to clean up some of the inconsistencies or things that aren't very well clarified in 1137, or just change things altogether. So be sure to just be flexible and watch your emails, sign up for our blogs if you haven't already, because we try to keep everyone updated, or we do keep everyone updated who has signed up for those with any changes or procedural changes or anything like that that comes down from the legislature. Okay, so some trends that we have seen now that we're about a year and a half in. The bad news is that collection turnovers pretty frequently have to be sent back to the board or the management company because of tiny little issues with the letters, with the posting, with various sorts of compliance with the law. So please, if you have received those back from my office or from another attorney's office, you are not alone. Remember, you're not alone. We send back a lot of them, but make sure that when you do get those back, you change your procedures or change your letters or whatever you need to do to make sure that you're complying with those, because judges are scrutinizing everything. The environment that we're working in with the courts right now are extremely homeowner friendly. And so we need to do everything that we can to make sure that all of the I's are dotted, all of the T's are crossed, all of the words that the statute has required be in those letters are in the letters, because otherwise, if we go ahead and move ahead with a letter that more or less mostly follows all of the requirements, we're asking for trouble down the road. And just as a reminder, many of you may know this already, but many of you may not. One of the portions of Kiowa that is very useful to associations is that if the association takes someone to court and prevails at court and they win, the homeowner has to pay the association's attorney fees. So the association isn't out that money, the homeowner pays the attorney fees, the association is made whole. However, the flip side of that is that if the association takes someone to court and they lose, then not only can the association not collect the attorney fees incurred from the homeowner, but the association is also on the hook for paying the homeowner's attorney as well. So the stakes are high, and we want to make sure that we put you in the best possible position to successfully be able to succeed at trial, to win at trial, but then also to be able to collect against the homeowner for those balances due. So I apologize for sending letters back with teacher red pen marks all over it saying these things need to be changed, but we really are just trying to make sure that we're putting everyone in the best possible position to prevail at trial and be in a good place. So the good news after 1137 is that everyone was very, very worried about how the designated contact and preferred language changes were going to pan out. We thought, people were going to set 18 different people as their designated contact and request letters be in, Klingon or ridiculous, unnecessary languages. Certainly if someone requests a language that they actually speak and understand, then absolutely those need to be complied with. And I understand why homeowners would want to have letters received in languages that they understand. However, we thought that people would maybe take advantage of that requirement and ask for languages that they don't speak, obscure languages that they don't speak, Klingon, things like that. And those have not, for the most part, panned out. So that is great news and something that we thought we would need to be worried about that we apparently do not. So I'll take a break again and run through the questions real quick. There's a question that an HOA raised their dues and an owner reached out and said she can't afford it and was requesting to pay a reduced amount. Most likely that will not be allowed pursuant to the governing documents, and we generally advise against that, although because the documents likely say that everyone has to pay a certain amount equally or divided by floor space or however it is, and the board does not have the authority to lower assessments for anyone. It's a specific question, so we'd have to look at the documents to be sure, but that's generally the answer. What changed in the conduct of meetings policy? There were changes made to what sort of things need to be discussed during executive session. The turning over of homeowners to collections is one of those things, and so we needed to update the conduct of meetings policy to include those additional things that need to be handled in the executive session portion. I assume collections will require a balloon payment at the end of 18 months if a balance remains. That's correct. We'll talk about payment plans a little bit later, but the statute is unclear about these two different payment plans that they refer to in there, and one of them does require a balloon payment, but again, we'll talk about that a little bit more later. Can you bill for the monthly statement? You cannot. One of the things in Kiowa states that any sort of information to a homeowner that only provides a balance due cannot be billed for. So the monthly statements cannot be billed for. Delinquency versus past due, those mean the same thing. In my language, I can't promise that's the same with your accounting systems or anything like that, but I use those terms interchangeably. Okay, there's some additional questions in here that I did not address because I believe we'll be addressing them later, but I wanted to just run through and make sure there wasn't anything that I wasn't going to talk about later. All right, so just to make sure that you have your ducks in a row, as the presentation says, we have the top 8, because I couldn't quite come up with 10 issues that we are seeing at turnover. So issue number 1. First and foremost, the collection policy has been updated but not signed and sent to the attorney. So please make sure that you do that. I know I am beating a dead horse with that, but we receive several turnovers every single week that we have to send back and say, hey, I know we drafted these updates for you, but we can't move ahead with this person until we get them back. So please send them back to the attorney when you receive them signed from the board. Issue number 2, payment plans. So 1137 talks about payment plans in 2 different places. In one place, they talk about offering an 18-month payment plan to a homeowner before they send them to collections and offering 18 equal payments. In another section of 1137, they're talking about sending a homeowner to foreclosure, and they say you have to offer them a payment plan of 18 months, 17 payments of which are at least $25. And the assumption is that payment number 18 would be a balloon payment of the remaining balance due. It is clear from discussions in the legislature while 1137 was being discussed, and then also afterwards in for instance, the HOA task force meetings, and then other information that I have seen come out from various legislators. It was their intention that they did not mean for these to be 2 separate payment plan offers. What they meant was equal payments of 8 for 18 months, or if your balance isn't very high, you need to have payments of at least $25 towards the delinquent balance, plus your current assessments. But unfortunately, that's not how the statute was written. There are these 2 different payment plan options in there, and a lot of times associations and boards aren't sure whether or not they might eventually foreclose on someone. We generally recommend going the collection process first, trying to collect against the homeowner individually, but sometimes on some matters, a foreclosure makes more sense. And we're not going to know that beforehand when the management company is putting together and sending out the payment plan offer letters. So what we recommend is that you offer the homeowner 3 different payment plan options in your payment plan offer letter. Number 1, you offer them 18 equal payments of the delinquency plus their current assessments when due. Number 2, you offer 17 payments of $25 each plus current assessments when due and the big balloon payment at the end. And number 3, you offer them blank lines where they can write in their own proposed payment plan, and then it's up to the board's approval whether or not they want to accept that payment plan. I know that is frustrating and confusing, but unfortunately, it is our recommendation that offering at least those first two options covers all your bases and complies with both confusing payment plan chunks of 1137. Okay, issue number 3, and I'm going to talk about this and then I'll run through the questions again to see if there's any additional questions about the payment plan offer that I didn't just address. But since this also deals with the payment plan offer, I am going to cover this as well right now. So the third issue that we're seeing is that the payment plan offer letter is not being sent to the homeowner in the ways that are required under 1137. So you want to first send that payment plan offer letter by certified mail, return receipt requested. You do not actually have to receive back notice and confirmation from the post office that they signed for and got that letter. Your only requirement is that you sent it out by certified mail. If they refuse to sign for it and it comes back refused, that's not your problem. You have complied with the statute. Certainly you want to keep a record of the certified mail tracking number and record of whether or not you received it back, rejected, or they did sign for it. Keep documentation of all of that, but you don't have to force them to sign for it and receive the certified mail letter. You just have to, you have done your part when you send it out. Second, you're required to post a copy of that letter to the unit in the association. So a couple of things about that requirement. First and foremost, that is the requirement to post at the unit in the association. So if you have an offsite address for them and you know they live in Minnesota or somewhere, you don't have to post the notice on their door in Minnesota. You're posting it to the door in the association here in Colorado. It doesn't matter if it's vacant. It doesn't matter if there's tenants there. You need to post it to the unit here. We have some management companies who will put the letter in an envelope and post that on the door. Other management companies just post the letter to the door. The statute doesn't say either way. I understand the desire to maybe have a little bit of not expose them to knowing that the Amazon delivery guy knows that they're not paying their assessments. So it's totally fine to put it in an envelope first. But I would also note in your procedures internally or note in the file somewhere internally that you put that in an envelope and post it on the door. Finally, about the posting, make sure that you are documenting the posting. And it doesn't matter if it's an affidavit from a process server that says, yes, I posted this on this day at this time at this address. That's fine. A photo works fine as long as there's a date and time stamp associated with that somewhere. The only thing that I caveat about photos is that if you have a photo of your document being posted to the door, make sure that the door doesn't take up the entire picture with a picture of the letter, because that could be anywhere. We generally want to see a picture far enough back from the home to see the numbers of the house or the house color or anything really that can help identify that this was posted on the right unit and it wasn't some other random unit. And then finally, so you're sending this payment plan offer letter, you're sending it certified mail to the mailing address of the homeowner. So if that person lives in Minnesota, that certified mail is going to Minnesota. You're posting a physical copy of the letter at the unit, and you're sending the letter by one of 3 other ways, either by regular mail to the homeowner's mailing address, by email to an email address the homeowner has provided to you, or by text to a phone that the homeowner has provided to you, although I have not heard of anyone actually sending anything by text. If anyone is, that's fine. It complies with the statute, but I don't know of anyone who is actually sending it by text. All right, so I'm going to run through the questions that have come in about this since we started talking about it, about the payment plan offer letter? So someone said, has the 18-month payment plan led to HOAs being unable to pay bills? Seems like that could definitely become an issue. What happens then? Um, yes, anecdotally, yes, there are associations that are not being able to pay, their insurance premiums, things like that, because they had to put a special assessment out to pay their insurance premium, and now they're not able to do so because they have to offer 18-month payment plans to people. I don't have an easy answer for that, but yes, anecdotally, I have heard of that happening. If someone is on a payment plan and it comes up for the next year dues, does the payment plan change to include the current dues, or are those subject to a new 18-month payment plan? Homeowners are required to pay their current assessments during the course of the 18-month payment plan. So if you have annual assessments and their next annual assessment comes due during the payment plan, they have to pay that next annual assessment for whatever amount the 2024-2025 annual assessment amount is. There's a question about costs associated with posting and certified letters and things like that. That is another part of 1137 that, again, the legislators have made clear since then that they did not intend for those costs to be passed on to the homeowners. However, the bill wasn't written that way. The bill doesn't say one way or the other whether or not those fees and charges can be passed on to the homeowner. What I am recommending is that as of right now, it is fine to pass on those actually incurred fees. So process server fees, certified mail fees, things like that. Those are fine to pass on to the homeowner. However, I think it is possible or likely that at some point down the road, judges will start to say that those cannot be collected from the homeowners, and or 1137 will be changed to clearly state that those are not collectible from homeowners. So for now, it is fine to add those charges to the ledgers, but no, down the road, we may have to go back on that and change if things change later. If someone chooses the balloon payment option and they cannot make the balloon payment at the end of the payment plan, then you send them to collections on that remaining balance due. At that point, you do not have to offer a new payment plan on that remaining balance due. If multiple units are billed in one, is one posting unit okay? For example, a parking spot or storage. I would recommend in that case, if you have a unit, a home that's associated with that, I would just post at the door to the home. If it's something separate that is done separately and billed separately, that you have a storage unit or a garage or something like that that is not associated with a condo unit or something like that, where it's more clear to post at, I would just post on each individual place. Monthly statements do not have to be sent certified unless your documents provide otherwise. For the most part, only the payment plan offer letter has to be sent certified. Do you have to send a demand letter before offering a payment plan? And if so, what are the service requirements for the demand? You're going to want to follow whatever the association's collection policy says. A lot of collection policies provide for a courtesy notice to be sent out to the homeowner basically before the association has to incur all of the extra costs and headache of offering the payment plan and posting it and certified mail and all of those things, but there's no legal requirement for that courtesy notice. So you'll just want to follow whatever the collection policy says, and there's no magical language that needs to be included in any of the letters that go out other than the payment plan offer letter. And the language of the payment plan offer letter is extensive and is very specific. So if you haven't had an attorney look at those yet, I would highly recommend doing that before you send it out and spend the money to post that letter, just to be told later that there needs to be a change for it and you'll have to do it again. What do you do if the homeowner does not respond to any of the letters? The collection policies that we have drafted say that if the homeowner does not respond to the payment plan offer letter or make the payments as listed in the payment plan offer letter, then that is assumed to be a rejection of the payment plan. And at that point, you can send them to collections. You don't have to wait for them to default 3 months. You only have to wait for them to default 3 months if they accept the payment plan or just start making payments on the payment plan. If you don't hear anything at all, no payments, no response from them, you're good to, once that payment plan offer letter expires, 30 or 35 days later, to take the next step in the collections process. Okay, I'm going to move on with our next section, and I'll come back and do a few more of the questions as we proceed. Issue number 4, document everything. Like I previously said, you are required to document communication with the homeowner, regardless of how that happens, email, phone, any of those things. You want to document attempts to communicate with the homeowner, which means emails being sent to them that you didn't receive a response to, any voicemails listed or sent to them that you didn't receive any response to, letters that you sent to them that you didn't receive any response to. All of that goes under the category of documenting everything. And then, of course, you want to document your compliance with 1137. So again, as I said before, copies of the certified mail tracking number, anything you receive back from the post office about the certified mail, a photo of the notice being posted on their door, or the process server's affidavit of it, anything like that, anything that's questionable, document it. Issue number 5, the board is required to vote in executive session to turn someone over to collections, just like they previously had to do to send someone to foreclosure. We are seeing a lot of boards making this vote during email, and unfortunately that does not comply with the requirements of 1137. Your board has to actually meet and go into executive session. Email votes are not okay for this purpose. And also remember, document that vote somehow. It doesn't matter if it's documented in a resolution that the board can sign and we can send, we can create a sample resolution for the board's use that they can just fill in the homeowner's address, name, and what the votes were for and against. We can send that out if that's helpful to any of you. Or it can be documented in the meeting minutes of the board meeting. But I always advise, if you're putting it in the meeting minutes, or when you put it in the meeting minutes, make sure you put the specific account that was voted to go to collections, so that there's a easy way to associate that vote with that particular homeowner. However, you don't want to say Joe Smith at 123 Main Street was voted to be sent to collections. It is much better if you can put account 789, or however you designate the account internally in your system, was sent to collections by a board vote in executive session. That's the ideal way to handle that, so that we can easily connect that vote to the proper account, but also are not broadcasting to everyone who looks at those meeting minutes exactly who was sent into collections. All right, and issue number 6, interest is limited to 8%. It doesn't matter if your declarations or a prior collection policy still says 18% or 21% or anything that was being handled previously. You are now, as of August 8th, 2022, limited to 8% interest. It is not retroactive, so you don't have to go backwards before August of 2022 and redo all of those numbers. But starting in August of 2022, moving forward, regardless of when your board actually adopted that policy after that point, make sure all of your interest calculations on your ledger moving forward from August of 2022 reflect 8%. Whether or not, generally speaking, the interest is only going to be on unpaid assessments. It's not going to be interest on other interest, late fees, attorney fees, management company fees, anything like that. But that is more document specific. And so if you have any questions about that, specifically about any associations, I would encourage you to discuss it with the association's attorney. But generally, interest is only going to be on unpaid assessments. All right, issue number 7, application of payments. As I said previously, this is one of the things that was required under the prior collection policy overhaul back in 2014, that associations had to say how payments were to be applied, but there was no guidance about what that actually had to say, what that process looked like. Now with 1137, the legislature has now mandated this is how payments are to be applied, and this does need to be included in their collection policy. Under the new rule, payments have to be first applied to unpaid assessments and then can be applied to everything else. So if your ledgers and your internal accounting reflects when a payment is received, here is the amount that was applied to late fees, here's the amount that was applied to unpaid assessments, make sure those systems are accurately reflecting this updated law. Again, this is also not retroactive, so you don't have to go backwards pre-August of 2022 and reapply those payments. But starting in August of 2022, on August 8th, any payments received after that point, regardless of when your association actually adopted their policy, those payments need to be applied appropriately pursuant to the new law. All right, and number 8, seemingly irrelevant information must be included in the payment plan offer letter. These are 2 of our biggest issues that we see, that we have to send new files back to the management company or to a self-managed board to say, I'm sorry, you have to include this additional information in your letter, even though it doesn't make any sense, even though it doesn't apply here, and you need to redo that payment plan offer letter, repost it, resend it certified, resend it regular mail, all of that. And it's frustrating and it delays the process. But again, we are just trying to put the association in the best possible position moving forward to be able to collect the full balance due from the homeowner. The 2 pieces of information that we see missing the most, there is language required to be in that letter now, as of 1137, that says not only does the association have the option to proceed in small claims court against the homeowner, but the homeowner also has that option. A lot of times we see letters that have the association's option in there, but what they leave out the language that the homeowner also has the option to go to small claims court against the association if they want to. Second, there is language that has to be included in there about what steps the association has to take on covenant enforcement, even though your homeowner may not have any covenant enforcement fines on their ledger, they may not have any open covenant enforcement violations out there. That language in those cases doesn't make any sense to include on this letter. I agree with you, but it still has to be there. And so we have had to send back letters to a management company, to a self-managed board, to a lot of management companies, to a lot of self-managed boards to add that language in there, even though it doesn't seem relevant. It doesn't make any sense given the specifics of that particular case. The statute doesn't say you only have to have this language if the homeowner has violations, if the homeowner has fines, anything like that. It still has to be in there. All right, take a break and run through some of these questions. Does the collection process have to start over with each assessment becoming due and becoming delinquent? If quarter one becomes past due and is sent to the attorney, then quarter two becomes past due. No, the attorney, at least at my office, and I believe that it is pretty standard at industry-wide, that we collect the full balance due from the homeowner up until either a judgment balance is paid in full or their account balance is zero. We don't treat each additional assessment as a separate case, a separate filing, anything like that. We're collecting the full balance due for the association. Is there a cheat sheet for all of this? You certainly should be able to download the PowerPoint that I've provided, but beyond that, I don't necessarily have a cheat sheet other than various articles that we have put out about all of these requirements or things like that. Certainly reach out to me by email if you want something beyond that I can provide for you. Can the monthly statement be an email referring the owner to log into the online portal to view their statements? Unfortunately, the monthly statements are, as of now, required to be sent by regular mail to the homeowner's mailing address. Oops. If someone has a lien and the bank repossesses the property, will the bank pay the remaining balance to the HOA, or is the HOA out the money? That's a little outside the context of what we're talking about today, but the short answer is that the association will likely receive the equivalent of 6 months of assessments from the bank, but beyond that, they may or may not be out the rest of the money. It'll depend on whether or not the attorney can collect from the prior homeowner or not. If the property is not owner occupied, where do you post? Do you still post on the unit at the association? If the tenant sees it, the tenant sees it. That's the legislature didn't provide any guidance there. They just said you have to post at the unit. So you may very well be notifying a tenant that their landlord doesn't pay their bills, but that's how the law was written. 8% is interest per year, not 8% per month. Okay, I am going to go ahead and finish up with the slides since we're getting low on time, and then I'll go back and finish up with any of the additional questions that I haven't been able to get to yet, but I want to make sure that we get through all the slides. Unfortunately for you, relatively speaking, and fortunately for me, most of the post-turnover process, so once someone is actually sent to an attorney for collections, didn't change with 1137. So anything that you know about how collections works after they get sent to the attorney looks pretty much the same as it did pre-1137. The biggest hurdle that we have is just making sure that all of these new requirements were complied with before coming to our office. One important bankruptcy trend of note that we are seeing, bankruptcy attorneys representing homeowners that are filing bankruptcy have gotten very, very, very aggressive with potential violations of the automatic stay. So if a homeowner files a bankruptcy, there is an automatic stay that goes in place immediately against all the collectors or all of their creditors. No creditors are allowed to take any sort of collection action to try to collect a balance due from a homeowner as soon as that bankruptcy is filed. So it's very important. If you receive any bankruptcy documents or a homeowner reaches out to you and says, hey, I filed bankruptcy, notify the association's attorney immediately. There are very quick timelines at least in a Chapter 13 bankruptcy for filing all of the required paperwork to make sure that the association is protected throughout the bankruptcy. So we want to make sure that we can be on top of that and protect the associations to the most extent possible through the bankruptcy. But you'll also want to make sure that your attorney is aware in case they're taking any collection action also. You also want to stop sending any delinquency notices. So if you have a homeowner that is only partway through the delinquency notices listed in the collection policy, You want to stop sending out those monthly invoices, or I'm sorry, stop sending out the delinquency notices. So you're not going to post the payment plan letter. You're not going to send out courtesy notices, anything like that. However, you do still have to send out the monthly invoice to the homeowner who has bankruptcy pending, but make sure you include that additional bankruptcy language that I can send you if you email me on those monthly invoices. And if you haven't yet recorded a paper lien against the property, you also don't want to do that. Bankruptcy attorneys, like I said, are getting very, very aggressive about violations of that automatic stay. So it's always best to reach out to the association's attorney and ask them any questions about what you should or shouldn't be doing with someone in bankruptcy. But we did have a bankruptcy attorney a year or so ago claim that his client, the homeowner, was so distraught by receiving one letter from their association after they filed bankruptcy that they were requesting $10,000 as a fine against the association for the homeowner's pain and suffering for that one letter. Now, they did not receive $10,000 in that case, but they requested it, and they requested it with a straight face. So make sure you do everything you can on your end to notify the bank or the homeowner. Oh my goodness, notify the association's attorney as soon as a bankruptcy pops up. If you get notice, you hear the homeowner tells you, however you come to find out that bankruptcy has been filed, make sure the association's attorney is aware and make sure you're not violating anything internally. Okay, so I'm happy to run through the rest of the questions that are on here that I haven't been able to get through yet. But also there's my email address. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. I'm happy to answer any additional questions after we get past our allotted time here. If you don't have any other questions, thank you very much for attending. I appreciate you coming to the webinar, and hopefully moving forward, everyone's letters will look perfect. And if they don't, I'm happy to answer additional questions and get you headed in the right direction. Let's see where we were here. Is the 8% interest simple or compound? Generally, like I said, that is going to be simple interest, but it is document specific. But most associations do simple interest. Notice of delinquency language specifically states that the cure policy needs to be in the notice. What does this look like? And is it only required if there are other violations? No, that language has to be in there regardless. And I would recommend, it is very specific language that has to be in your delinquency notices in general. And I would suggest that you reach out to your attorney so that they can provide you with a sample payment plan offer letter that complies with all of the requirements. Yes, the executive session portion of sending someone to collections, you want to have the discussion about sending someone to collections in executive session, but the vote should occur outside of executive session. And that's what would be reflected in the minutes, is that the board went into executive session to discuss delinquencies and voted to send the following accounts to collections. I believe there is a recording of the video, and I believe that they are uploaded to our website relatively quickly after the presentation is completed. Jessa Ledesma, who I referred to at the beginning, can let you know that for sure, but I believe that they are uploaded to our website pretty quickly after we're done. What do you do if you have a homeowner who doesn't respond to your payment plan offer letter, but starts making payments? I don't believe that you should proceed with sending someone to collections if they are making payments under the payment plan, even if they haven't specifically explicitly reached out to you and said, yes, I am accepting this payment plan. I think they are making the payments under the payment plan, and you should honor that payment plan as long as they continue to make the payments under the payment plan. Please explain collections if it is clear the balance is entirely fines. Whether or not the association wants to proceed with collections on a balance that is made up of fines is certainly a business decision that the board can make. Some boards take the philosophy that the purpose of the fines was to get compliance, and now we have compliance, so we're going to waive the fines. I think that is a reasonable decision. Some boards don't like that option, and they would prefer to do collections on the fines. That's fine too, as long as the fines were appropriate and legal when they were posted. We are not able to foreclose on someone if the balance is only fines and attorney fees associated with getting that underlying violation cured, but you can sue someone personally and collect against them personally for the fines. Again, whether or not a board wants to is a decision up to them. All right, I think I have mostly covered everything in the questions, I believe. And if anyone and we're out of time, so if anybody has any other questions, feel free to reach out to me. You have my email address. I'm happy to answer any additional questions, but a lot of you have similar questions to each other, so I think I covered pretty much everything in there. But again, reach out to me if you have any other questions, and thanks again for sharing your lunch with me. Have a good day, everybody.